Bava Kamma Daf Peches Amud Beis and Peites. Laden Mani Takanat Usha. So we're dealing with the Takanat Usha, which applies. It starts at the Pechet Amud Bet and it continues through the whole of Peitet. So it's important to understand the Takana of Usha. What was that Takana when the Sanhedrin was in Usha? After it had left Yerushalayim, after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, just before the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, they instituted various halachot, and this is one of them we're going to be dealing with. And in dealing with it, we're going to also be able to get an interesting glimpse into the difference between a Doraisa and a Rabbanan, how the laws of the Torah work and how the laws of the Rabbanan work, and why you need them both. So, for example, the laws of the Torah, according to the laws of the Torah, a husband doesn't inherit a wife. If a wife brings property into the marriage, we call that property nichsei melug. The wife brings property into the marriage. The husband doesn't inherit that. If she predeceases him, it goes to her children, to her family. That's the law midoraisa. The Rabbanan instituted a law that he does inherit from her. And that's kind of a quid pro quo for the requirement they gave him to redeem her, to ransom her if she gets taken hostage, which is a subject close to our hearts at the moment. Since he has to ransom her if she's taken hostage, the Chachamim don't want him to feel resentful about that, so they give him the right to inherit her property, any property that she brings into the marriage. In a sense, creating greater intimacy and greater connection. The blood relationship is something we're born with. We have a blood relationship with our brothers and sisters, our parents and our children. And that doesn't have to be specifically protected. Yes, there are various halachot, of course, but it's a natural thing that we have. But a marriage has to be worked on. A marriage is not a blood relationship. And even after years of marriage, there can be fractures in the marriage. And so the Chachamim say, midoraisa, a husband, we don't have to give the husband the rights and the wife's property so that the relationship is a non-resentful one. But according to the Rabbanan say that the reality is you do. The Torah deals with the world as it should be, and the Rabbanan deal with the world as it is. And you need both of that. You need to have a clear vision of how the world ought to be. You shouldn't have to give the husband the rights to inherit the wife in order to remove any resentment from him because he's responsible to redeem his wife. That should be something that's natural. But the real world, it isn't. So, and it's like that in all the Rabbanans. The Doraisas deal with the world as it is, as it should be, and the Rabbanan deal with the world as it is. And it's not enough just to have a knowledge of the world as it is, because then you get cynical. And it's not enough to have knowledge of the world as it should be, because then you become an idealist. The way to live, and it's not about finding a middle way between idealism and reality. It's living with the two poles, understanding the pole of idealism and the pole of reality, and working within that. But the Chachamim go further, as we're going to see today, in protecting this right of the husband, because there can be situations where his inheritance of her property is at risk, and we'll see that over here. So we need a little bit of background. The one I've given you is the idea of nichsei melug, which is property that a woman brings into the marriage from her family. She inherited it, she got it from her parents, she was in her own business, whatever the reason is. She brings a business, she brings an asset into the marriage. That asset is called nichsei melug. It can be nichsei tzombarzel as well, which we won't go into now. Let's talk about nichsei melug. The din with nichsei melug is the Rabbanan instituted not only that the husband inherits the wife, but during the lifetime of the marriage, he gets the fruit, he gets the profits from the business. The business remains hers, and in the event of death or divorce, she gets the business back, or the property back. But during the lifetime of the marriage, he manages the business and gets the revenue, gets the profit from the business. That's one of the tachonos that the Chachamim made. The second thing we need to understand as background is a machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Reish Lakish, on Peches Amud Beis, where they argue on the question of the nature of kinyan peirot generally, not specifically in the case of nichsei melug, not definitely specifically in the case of a husband and a wife's partnership in a property, but generally, if a person has the rights to the income but not a right to the capital, is that considered to some degree of equity ownership, or is it only a profit share? Does the person who has a right to profits have some rights in the equity as well? When you buy a share in the company, are you actually buying a piece of the company, or are you buying the rights to what the company produces? And Rabbi Yochanan holds kinyan perot kiginyan aguf dami. No, even if you've only got the rights to revenue, that is really rights to the potential of the capital. So although the capital itself doesn't belong to you, you have the rights to the capital's potential, which means you do have some equity ownership. It's the ownership of the potential of the capital to produce. That's how Rabbi Yochanan sees it. Reish Lakish says, kinyan perot lavke kinyan aguf dami. No, you have no rights whatever in the equity itself, in the capital itself. You only have a right in what is produced. That's the background for our Gemara. Omer Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina be'usha hitkinu ha'isha, the bottom of Pechet Amud Bet, ha'isha shemechara b'nichsei milug b'chayei ba'ala u'meita. What now if a woman sells her nichsei milug? So again, she brings nichsei milug into the marriage. The husband is entitled to the revenue from the nichsei milug. She decides to sell. She's the owner. She wants to sell the nichsei milug. And then she dies. The husband now comes along and says, I am the inheritor. I have a right to this. We say, well, taflak, there's nothing to inherit. She's already sold it. In Oshא, they made the halacha, habal motzi midei lekuchot, that the husband can go to the buyer and say, sorry, you bought a dud. You bought something that didn't belong to my wife when she sold it to you. So this actually belongs to me, and I take the property back. That was a takana in Oshã. And so the question to look at is the nature of that takana. And we see that in this an interesting machlokas between Rashi and Tosfos. Let's see how Rashi understands this. Rashi says the last Rashi on Pechet Amud Bet, and he says something again, similar again on Peitet Amud Bet. Dafagav de ba'alma lav kekinyan aguf dami, we paskin like Reish Lakish. This is one of the only 3 cases where we paskin like Reish Lakish. That if you have the rights to the revenue, you have no rights to the capital. Nevertheless, in this case, if she sells the property, the husband can take the property back. Why? Bal benichsei ishto almuha Ra'anana l'shibudei. The Rabbanan strengthened the husband's rights in the field. And the Rabbanan say, although normally if you only have a right to revenue, you have no right in the capital. But the husband's right to the revenue of his wife's property gives him a right in the capital. It creates a shibud. This property is now a lien to him. He has a right over it, and she can therefore not sell it. And if she does sell it, he can claim it back, mishum eva. So here you see the Rabbanan going further and saying, not only did the husband inherit his wife, not only does the husband have the rights of revenue from the wife's property, but if the wife alienates the property and sells it to somebody else and then she dies, now he has the right to inherit the entire property. He can take it back from the buyer. So in Oshã, they went very far in protecting the husband's rights in this issue. V'havi kilokeach rishon, it's as if he did a deal before she sold it to the second person. On Peites, Rashi says a similar thing. It says, De'alim shibudei lemevi kekinyan haguf. The Chachomim made his rights to the revenue as strong as if he had rights in the property. He doesn't have rights in the property, but they gave him keilu, as if he had rights in the property. They strengthen, they reinforce his rights to the revenue. Tosfos asks an interesting question. He asks it here, in Yevomis, in Ksubas. Tosfos asks, what about Rabbi Yochanan? Rabbi Yochanan says, if you've got rights to the revenue, you own something of the capital. You own the potential of the capital to produce. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, do you need takonas Oshã? You shouldn't need takonas Oshã. She can't sell the property. Even without takanat Oshã, she can't sell the property because he has rights in the property. It's the kinyan perek, kinyan aguf. So Tosfos deals with that in various different ways. And one of the things that Tosfos says in Yevomis is she'ein lebal peirot ela mikocha. Well, firstly, let's look at our Tosfos. Our Tosfos says, v'yesh lomar de'itztrich leichad dekatav la'adinu dvarim ein li b'nechasayach u'v'peirotein u'v'peirei peirotein ad sof ha'olam. In the event that the husband forgoes his rights to the revenue, so she brings property into the marriage. The Chachomim say he has the rights to the revenue. He says, I don't need it. I'm a wealthy man myself. I don't need the revenue. She then sells the property and dies. Can he take it back? So Tosfos says, yes, even if he's, and that's why Rabbi Yochanan needs takanat Oshã. Even if he doesn't have any rights to the revenue, he does have rights to her property. It's not linked to the revenue. This is a different din. According to Rashi, it seems that he has rights to the fruit, to the revenue, and the Chachomim extended that right to include a certain right in the property as if he had rights in the capital. But according to Tosfos says no, this is a separate din altogether, even if he has no rights to the revenue. He's given those rights up. Nevertheless, takanat Oshא is if she dies, the property comes back to him, even if she sold it. And there's a beautiful Avnei Miluim, which we don't have the time to go into in detail, but the Avnei Miluim brings the Rashi and Tosfos, and he explains this as a machlokes Rashi and Tosfos, the way I'm explaining. The Avnei Miluim was the Ktsos HaChoshen. The Ktsos HaChoshen is on Choshen Bishpat, and the Avnei Miluim is on Even HaEzer, on the laws of marriage. And he writes here, that's what Rashi is trying to say, is Almua Rabbanan Likinyan Peres. They made it stronger, and therefore, even if he doesn't have any rights to the revenue, he doesn't have rights to the capital, and she can sell it. Whereas according to Tosfos, this is a new law that even if he doesn't have rights to the revenue, she may not sell that. And the question we want to look at is why, according to Tosfos, according to Rashi, we understand the Chacham gave him a right to the revenue, and they strengthened that right to the revenue and the rights to inherit it, so that in the event that she dies, he's secure, he gets the field. But why, according to Tosfos and many other poskim, where Tosfos holds that even if he has no rights in the field at all, she brings a field in from her family. It's a business. Her family's had the business for generations. She brings it in. He says, I'm a wealthy man, I don't need Paris. The business is yours, it's your family's, you're in partnership with your brothers, just go on with it, I'm not involved. She then sells it, and she dies. Takanas Oshã is, he can come along and say, okay, but now I want it. I know I gave up the rights to the parents. I know I had nothing to do with the business all the years of our marriage, but now I'm entitled to inherit it. And the other guy says, but we've bought it. The brothers say, we bought her share from her. And the husband says, Takanas Oshã, I want it. According to Rashi, we say, sorry, you gave up your rights to the revenue, so you don't have any rights to the capital. According to Tosfos, even though you gave up your rights to the revenue, you do have rights to the capital. Why? There's an amazing Shita Mukubetzis in Ksubis, which the Avnei Miluim references, where he says in the name of the Talmid de Rabbeinu Yonah, that the reason for takanat Oshã is, she'im lo haya takana zu kol isha sheba'alam lo hayta manechet yerushata leba'ala, ela hayta notenet levanea o lachea. The Chachomim say he inherits his wife. And there are reasons for it. They want this couple financially to be connected the same as they are connected emotionally, because Chachomim realize the financial severance can fracture the marriage. So the Chachomim help to combine their assets in a way that protect her and protects him. So they give him the rights to the revenue, they give him the rights to inherit. The Chachomim are worried he'll never get that right to inherit because she will sell it to her family. But she's in love with her husband. Why would she do such a thing? But we see when it comes to money, people are strange. People are funny. This business has been in my family. I inherited it from my father. He got it from his grandfather. I don't want it going to my husband. But at the end of the day, it's just your husband. You lived with him for 40 years. What is the problem? I wanted to go to my children. Our children. It's fine, but not to my husband. It's not a blood relationship. And the Torah says, we're not worried about that. They love each other. Everything will be fine. The Chachomim say it won't always be fine. And we need to institute a takanat Oshã that prohibits her from alienating property to which he has a right of inheritance. Even though he's given up all his other rights to that property, the Chachomim have given him that right to inheritance and protect it in order to do so. And the Avnei Miluim says, that's according to Tosfos, that's the reason for the takanat Oshã. According to Rashi, we don't need a reason. It's clear what happens. But according to Tosfos, it says this is a separate takana, that even if the husband has given up all his rights to the revenue of the property, nevertheless, he has a right to the inheritance, and she cannot alienate that inheritance, even though he's given up the rights. According to Rashi, if he's given up the rights to the revenue, he's given up the rights to the inheritance as well, and if she sold it, it's sold. But according to Tosfos, explains the Avnei Miluim, that's not possible. Why is that so? Why did the Chachomim go so far as to make it impossible for her to sell her own property? Because what we're worried about is she would prefer it to be in the hands of her blood relations rather than in the hands of her marital relation. And that would do him out of something which the Torah has assigned to him, which the Torah has given him the rights to. And we get a sense from there of how hard one has to work on a marriage. that a blood relationship is natural, that the connections are natural, but a marriage, even after a long time, it's not as secure as a blood relationship, and the couple has to put in effort to make sure that they feel the responsibility to one another in all areas of their lives, not only emotionally and physically, but also economically and financially.